What's going on, Muscle Monsters? Align Gonzalez here, and today I want to talk about meal frequency and whether or not it's important. And if it is, how many meals per day should we be consuming if we want to build muscle maximally, right? So we got two ends of the spectrum, in my opinion. We got one end who says meal frequency absolutely does not matter at all, okay? On this end of the spectrum, we got the old school bodybuilding methodology of, you got to keep putting wood in the furnace or, wood in the fire so it can continue to burn. And, they're implying that if we continue to eat meals more frequently, our metabolism keeps working and, we stay leaner, and then we're continuing to feed the muscles so we're never going catabolic and so on and so forth, okay? The problem with this end is that we understand that there is a thermic effect of food, right? We do burn calories whenever we consume, but the amount of calories we burn is on average about 10%, right? So their train of thought was, every time we consume a meal, we're burning calories, we're revving the metabolism or whatever. Okay, but the problem with that is that if you know basic math, then if someone is consuming 3,000 calories per day, whether they're doing it in 6 sittings or whether they're doing it in 2 sittings, 10% of 3,000 calories is the same either way. So the total thermic effect or calories that the thermic effect is responsible for is ultimately the same. All right, so these people over here take that information and say, okay, well then it doesn't matter. Okay, I'm right in the middle on this one. Okay, and I'll tell you why. It's because there is a study, or not a study that I read necessarily, but a study that I read about. And I read about this study in the book The Lean Muscle Diet by Lou Schuler and Alan Aragon. And if you're not familiar with Alan Aragon, then I highly recommend that you do get familiar. In my opinion, he is probably the leading expert in muscle building nutrition in the world. All right, I'll go as far as to say that. All right, so here's the deal. Here's the study. Okay, it was over the course of 12 hours, I believe, and they had 3 groups. One group was consuming 8 meals, right, with 10 grams of protein per meal. All right. Another group was consuming 4 meals with 20 grams of protein per meal. And then another group was consuming only 2 meals with 40 grams of protein per meal. So they all equated to the same amount of protein for that 12-hour period. All right. We got the 8 meals, we have the 4 meals, and we have the 2 meals. And the researchers found that the highest increase in protein synthesis happened in the group that was consuming 4 meals with 20 grams of protein per meal, right? So what does that tell us? Number one, that more frequently consuming meals more frequently would ultimately mean that the protein per meal is going to be lower, and thus it is not going to have as great an effect on protein synthesis as more protein over less meals. But too little of meals is also not going to have the same effect as a moderate amount of meals with a moderate amount of protein. All right, so I hope that wasn't confusing. It's a pretty simple study. I hope you found that helpful, and this does not mean by any means that if you're consuming 3 meals a day that you should move to 4 and you're going to get much better results. It simply means that there is data out there that is showing us that meal frequency does play a role. And that's pretty much it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, click the like button below, subscribe for more videos, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.